Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back once again to our brand new Let's Play. This time, we're going to do Wild Arms 2, just like you asked for. And by you, I mean the ones of you who actually voted for Wild Arms 2. The rest of you, don't feel bad. I still plan on doing those games in the future. And for those of you who didn't vote, if you don't like Wild Arms 2, then you probably should have voted. So, now that that's out of the way, let's talk a bit about this right here. Just like Wild Arms 1, we got 3 starting characters to choose from, and they really do look a lot different than our cast from Wild Arms 1, don't they? And there's an ant on my arm biting me. Ow. Well, anyway, let's just go ahead and get started with a young man ready for action. So, yeah. Blah. Got a bit of a frog in my throat, so forgive me. Oh, and by the way, I am playing this on my PS3. I had some graphical issues with playing it the way I normally do it. So I'm playing this on my PS1 Classics version of the game on my PS3. So we'll see how that works out. So these strapping young lads are known as the Musketeers. They are being sent to rescue a hostage held by 3 kidnappers in these ruins known as the Withered Ruins. And of course, we're introduced to Musketeer B, our main character, Ashley Winchester. I want to call him Ashley Riot all the time, but that's not his name. That's a different game. Now, they never really explain, well, anything about the Musketeers. Pretty much all they say is that they are a kind of military unit, and that they work for the country of Maria Boulay. As far as I can tell, my personal opinion, of course, it's my personal opinion, is that they're kind of a police unit, something akin to like a SWAT unit. Because you wouldn't send, under normal circumstances, you wouldn't send a military unit in to rescue one hostage. You know, that's something for like the SWAT team and stuff, you know. Military action, at least in hostage situations, is usually reserved for something like, you know, a large number of hostages in a well-armed and motivated hostage-taking unit. You know, hostage-takers. Well, anyway, enough about the Musketeers. Let's talk about the controls. Basic field controls. Directional pad moves you around. If you hold the X button, you dash in the direction you're facing. If you've ever played A Link to the Past, it works kind of like the Pegasus boots, but with a little bit more slip to it, I guess. So you can make turns. If you've ever played Wild Arms 1, the running works just the same way. It's got the same general feel to it. So, if you go from the first game to the second game, that'll feel real natural. Triangle opens up your menu, and if you hold triangle while you're in your menu, you can look at a little help thing at the bottom. Or at the top, depending on, you know, what menu you're in. Special note about berries in this game. They are your typical potions like they were in the first game. Only problem is you can't buy them in normal stores. So you have to kind of be conscious of how you use them. It's not something you can go pick 99 up every time you come into town. I'll go over Gimel coins in a second. Equipment is pretty straightforward. Auto battle is pretty straightforward. Your form is pretty straightforward. Status screen. Let's talk about a bit of the status screen. The stats are also fairly straightforward. Strength determines your attack power. Vitality determines your HP growth, and I'm pretty sure defense. Sorcery determines your magic damage, and I'm pretty sure your magic resistance. Attack power is your strength plus the damage on your weapons. Defense is your defense. Parry, I think, is a function of your response, which is your speed in battle. It determines speed, order, and things like that. It also has a couple of other uses. For example, later on in the game, you get the ability to steal from enemies. Well, your response raises. The higher your speed, the more likely you are to succeed at that. Luck is an interesting stat that affects lots of little things, as it does in most games. I hate it whenever they describe luck that way. It affects lots of little things, but really that's the best way to describe it in this game, because it affects things that you wouldn't necessarily think it would affect. For example, if you're using a stat lowering spell, such as a defense lowering spell, well, if you have best luck, which it goes from worst, bad, normal, good, best luck. That's the scale. So if you have best luck, you have a much higher chance of it sticking on an enemy versus having worst luck. So, lots of little things you can do. Personal skills we'll talk about when we get to a personal skill store later in the game. For now, just know that you get 1 PS point for every level you gain. Right now I'm level 1, therefore I have 1 point to spend. This page is the original powers page. It basically lists all of the in-battle skills that a character can use. Ashley's special abilities all revolve around his bayonet, which is basically a gun. It's an arm with a bayonet on it. And his normal attacks utilize the bayonet in, while his special attacks use ammo from special cartridges. All of his different abilities. Apparently the bayonet is a really useful weapon in the universe, but it's also very hard to use because it's real big and bulky. But it can shoot lots of different kinds of ammo, so it's very useful. Over here we have the force abilities. Right now he only has accelerator, which is not really useful. I suppose it's a little more useful in this game than it was in the first one, because in the first game, Jack, who had it in the first game, was usually so much faster than everyone that there was really no point in using it. But here it can be useful for like super emergencies, but generally I don't use it. We'll talk about his other force abilities as they become available. Custom commands. Custom commands are something you get by equipping mediums. If you don't remember what mediums are or have never seen the first game played and just don't know what they are, they go in the guard. See right there on the equipment where it says guard? That's short for guardian. Mediums basically raise your stats, and unlike the first game, they have the added effect of giving you custom commands, which range from an analyze command, which allows you to see HP weaknesses of normal enemies, to a more powerful physical hit, to stealing from enemies, all kinds of useful stuff. And that was the last page. So, okay, let's start talking to these gentlemen. Well, it's emergency, we must act. The mercs that they're talking about are very analogous to the Dream Chasers from the first game. They actually have something like that in at least the first 3 games. Dream Chasers, mercs. I don't remember what they call it in the 3rd game. I, for the life of me, can't remember. But then again, I never beat the 3rd game because of the way you had to find towns in that game. See, you find towns the same way in this game as you did the 3rd game, but this game they have visual clues on the map. I'll talk about that more later. This gentleman explains what Gimmel coins do. So basically what Gimmel coins do in a nutshell, I'm not even going to talk to him, just waste time. What Gimmel coins do in a nutshell is when you get a game over, they allow you to start back over the battle that you got a game over with the stats you went into with the battle. That's what they do in a nutshell. For the most part, I really rarely have to use Gimmel coins. Mini carrots raise your force gauge by 1 level, which is 25 points. They work the same way in this game as they did the previous one, although they are a little more useful in this game than they were in the first one, because of the fact, okay, in the first game you could use your abilities basically willy-nilly. If you had enough MP to use one of Jack's fast draw abilities, one of Cecilia's spells, or ammo for one of Rudy's arms, there was nothing to stop you from using it. This guy, by the way, will heal your wounds. In this game, the battle system works a little differently, and I'll go over that in just a second as soon as I can get into a battle, which starts from this point on. Sure, I'll go check it out. I like this guy here. He talks about how I messed up. He's like, oh, you done messed up. I jumped down here to come save you. Hey, look at that! Whoa! Oh, I'm so glad you caught that switch before it attacked us. Anyway, for checking on this gentleman, we get ourselves our first tool, the hurl knife. You use tools in this game by pushing the square button. Different tools have different usages. The hurl knife, pretty much all it does is it goes in a straight line and it hits switches that are in a straight line from you. When it hits a wall, it falls and bounces down. And it will actually hit things below from where you hit it. I'll have to demonstrate that later on. Ashley pretty much doesn't get another tool till the end of the game. Another, puzzle solving tool. So get used to all of his puzzles being centered around that knife. Alright, let's talk a little bit about the battle mechanics. Now, you may notice the battle commands here. If you've played Wild Arms 1, you'll probably note that they are almost identical. Hell, I think they're actually the same sprites on the commands as they were in the first game. So what we want to do here is fight, because, well, we don't have any equipment change. I don't want to run, have nobody to change formation with, and auto battle is kind of useless. So, let's talk a little bit about this. Original powers are where your bayonet ability, or your in-battle abilities and your force abilities are located. The star is where your custom commands are from your guardians. Defend, self-explanatory. Attack, self-explanatory. Items, pretty much self-explanatory. Let's see. This game, for the most part, if you played Wild Arms 1, the battle system is almost entirely the same. When you hit an enemy or take damage, your force gauge raises up. The big difference between this game and Wild Arms 1, though, is that you do not have any MP. You do not have MP. There is no MP in this game. What you use to use your abilities is FP. You'll notice right there, next to my shot weapon, right here, that it has a 6 next to FP. Well, I have to have 6 FP to use that ability. However, one thing to note is that when you use an ability, your FP does not decrease. If I have 25 FP now, for example, if I were to use shot weapon, after I use the ability, I will still have 25 FP. The only things that consume FP are your force abilities, such as Accelerator. And I'm actually going to go ahead and use Accelerator here because this guy's faster than me, and it'll save me a couple of points of unnecessary damage that I won't have to heal up from later. Now, another thing you may have noticed is at the beginning of the battle, before I, went into the battle transition, there was a red exclamation mark above my head. What that means is that the battle was unavoidable. Usually, that means that the enemy was either stronger than me, or they got a ambush. So, battle's unavoidable. You can still run from it, but you can't cancel out of it. When you are stronger than an enemy, or you get an ambush, you get the jump on someone, the exclamation point will be white, at which point you can hit the O button on the world map screen to cancel out of the fight, meaning you don't have to fight it.